Nos ad la gloria Dio porter, in cruce Domini nostri, Iesu Christi, in quae salus vita et resurrectio nostra, per quem salvati et liberati sumus. Deus misereatur nostri et benedicat nos, et luminet votum suum super nos, et misereatur nostri. Nos atem gloria Dio porter, in cruce Domini nostri, Iesu Christi, in quae salus vita et resurrectio nostra, per quem salvati et liberati sumus. We have in the Gospels here and there gems of phrases or verses. One would be the one that gave rise to the church, called Dominus Flevit, the Lord wept, which comes from the verse, Jesus wept as he looked down on Jerusalem, the city which had never known what made for its peace. That little chapel is built in the form of a tear. Another, although actually not a complete verse in itself, according to the division of verses that we have, could be one. In Greek it is just two words, or three. Ein denux, and or but it was night. Here in the translation that we have it says night had fallen. And that is not just a descriptive verse. It is typical of the language that John is using. We know that he opens his Gospel with something similar to the opening of the first book of the Pentateuch, therefore of the whole Bible. In the beginning, it goes on, in Principio, the last Gospel, we have that same thing coming through, and we have a cosmic backdrop in which very quickly the theme of the lack of capability of the dark to comprehend, to receive the light comes in. So right from the beginning of the Gospel we have this cosmic battle. In the midst of the outworking of the Lord's life, we have recurring constantly in John, in some shape or form, this ongoing battle. And then when it comes to this period that we're coming into, the dialogue with the Jews, which now comes into the Last Supper, and this discourse with the one who's collaborating with them, Judas, it becomes more intense. In the dialogue with the Jews, which goes on for about a fortnight already, at this time, before we come into Holy Week, we have always the Lord pointing out to the fact that the underlying problem is that they cannot accept the light. And of course here we have it explicitly put, Satan entered into him. Therefore it's not just suggested, it's said. And he goes here again into the night. Night had fallen. It was night. And we have a verse eventually when those that he is working with come to fetch Jesus in the garden, in that secret place that he knows about, because they have to be away from the crowd. The Lord actually says, this is your hour and the power of darkness. Again, a cosmic language. And in that wider context, we understand the drama that is happening as Judas goes. It's tomorrow, we refer to that, Spy Wednesday, and goes from the upper room where there were so many graces, including his own episcopal ordination, which he still carries wherever he is now, into the other, where the Lord then is left alone and is shown or sees mystically the whole of the future, the immediate future and the future of mankind, including the loss of grace and therefore the loss of bliss. All this blood shed in vain. And of course, unfortunately, he's warned that Judas is in the midst of that loss of grace. It seems that he shuddered when he first saw Judas, knowing that he could go one of either way. And so this is what happens all through the contact with Judas. He's very discreet. The Lord, even here in the language that he uses, keeps it from the other apostles. There's always the fact that the Lord was trying his best, and it's the same with every soul. The Lord is trying his best and never forces, but he foresees. It's not at all a predestination, as some Calvinists would have said, to damnation. It's just that the Lord can see that there's nothing that can be done for certain souls. Unfortunately, when we see a road accident or something, it could actually also be that rather than increase their loss on the other side, the Lord can foresee that he's doing in vain everything to get them back, so rather than make it even worse or let it be even worse, they can be called before their time. Now, with regard to the night, it is something to be borne in mind that on a real level, the night is the privileged field of operation of Satan, and it is therefore not indifferent how we spend our night. If one looks around Ireland now, it is interesting to see how proportionately the night is given to Satan. Satan has access to the heart massively of the nation through the instrument that he has dominated, the television. He now has it also through other means of communication, the cybersphere, very much under his influence. He has it through all that will happen, especially over the weekend periods, in the discos of our cities and towns, which are always becoming more and more nocturnal, upsetting the whole balance of time. He has it, of course, in the plethora of filth around with regard to sins of the flesh, at night, again, in which everything is permitted. In other words, it's a huge domination of the dark hours by this same adversary. For Satan, Shatan means adversary, the enemy of the soul. Therefore, it is not indifferent that we switch off from what is potentially linked to him. For we know from that lady who was given an experience of the beyond, she was an artist in Korea, and she was shown things underneath, down under, and she saw the effects of certain things, and one thing that she saw quite clearly was the demonic influence of television. The demons were coming out of certain programs, as it were, and getting into the souls, infiltrating them, leaving impulses, addictions, in some way getting into their system and not willing to depart afterwards. All this because they were opening the pores of their souls to what carried Satan's messages. Therefore, if we're aware of that, even to be linked to a machine which potentially is linked to him is something that we need to protect ourselves from by protecting ourselves before starting with a prayer, making sure that we are fully aware that every time we plug into live television or the cybersphere, we are potentially coming close to where demons are passing. It's important, because once we're starting on that, we can be contaminated. What enters the imagination doesn't go away quickly as we think. And then, with regard to the way in which the Lord is putting it on our heart to be a counterbalance to this darkness is very important. Here I'm very much aware of the importance of not getting rid of the early rise and F's. There's an extreme necessity to get up later because the demon does not like night adoration. He hates it. We know, of course, that he does his things maximally at about 3 in the morning with satanic worship. Therefore, it's very important that, if possible, there be adoration happening in the heart of the night. And then, of course, we know how many suicides happen in the night, and we know also that sometimes people are directly solicited by Satan at night when there's no one to talk to. He has access to the lonely soul. Depression, loneliness, worry, it's all a murky area where Satan can push the balance in the wrong direction. Only yesterday I had here somebody who was wanting me to pray for a friend of his who had just found at the bottom of a cliff, and on it goes. People who apparently, and he was somebody of that nature, very much into prayer. So these things are mysterious. All that to say that what's going on all the time around us is not just human. We are perpetually being solicited unexpectedly, even when we're in a shop, from porno coming through the radio. All this, Satan somehow in control. Exhala regis prodeunt, fuget crucis mysterium, quo carne carnis conditur, suspensus est patibulo, quo vulneratus in super, mucrone diro lance, ut nos lavaret crimine, manavit undet sanguine, agor decoret fulgida, ornata regis purpura, electa dignus dipite, tam sancta membra tangere. Beata cuius placis, seclipe pendit pretium, statera factis corporis, predam quitudit tartari. Salvara salve victima, de passionis gloria, qua vita mortem pertulit, et morte vitam redimit. O crux vespes unica, o passionis tempore, Pis ad auge gratiam, reisque dele crimina. De fons salutis trinitas, collaudet omnis spiritus, quos per crucis mysterium salvas fode per secundum.